Welcome to another episode of Teen Gen Talks, hosted by me, Melissa,
and me, Desiree.
Where the goal is to empower the youth of Glendale and connect youth to community resources, individuals, and organizations through interviews and discussions.
And today we are joined by a special guest, Carlos Cruz. Hailing from Northeast Ohio, Carlos joins the Gameheads team as its first program manager. He graduated from Carroll University in 2018 with a major in communications. In 2019, Carlos joined City Year Cleveland as Impact Manager, serving in the Cleveland Metropolitan School District until October 2021, when he relocated to Oakland to join the Gameheads crew. Today, Carlos is able to play a part in supporting students in their pursuit for a career in video game development.
Don't forget to follow us on our socials on Facebook and Instagram at MyGlendaleLAC. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And also make sure to give us a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Glendale Library Arts and Culture, where you watch full episodes every Friday at 4:30 p.m. Thank you, Carlos, for taking the time out of your day to talk with us. We have a lot to discuss.
Awesome. Thanks for having me here. I'm really excited.
So to begin with, I want to go back in time for a bit. You graduated from Carroll University in 2018 with a major in communication. Was communication something you always wanted to do, or how did you find that passion?
Kinda. So I like to talk. Like, I like to just have conversations with people, but like that's not why I majored in communication. Like, where I went to school and where I, grew up around, there wasn't like too many opportunities for me to get into like working with multimedia in just in the way that I wanted to. So when I went to Carroll, like I originally wanted to work in like film. Like I wanted to make films and videos and stuff like that. But there wasn't like that. There wasn't anything like that at Carroll. The department was communication and theater arts. Like that was the name of the department. So I'm like, okay, I want to do that. But I didn't want to major in theater either, because I wanted to work specifically with multimedia. And so there was a focus in that where I can like take a bunch of journalism classes, learn how to use Photoshop. A lot of like, I call it like artistic software, artistic technology, because I always just wanted to get into that, like graphic design and such. But really like, what I like to do is like illustration. Like I like to draw. And so those classes in school allowed me to it gave me an excuse to use that software, but also do it for a grade, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's why I majored in it.
During your time at Carroll, what is something that you have learned during your time there that has stayed with you until now?
Oh yeah. So advocacy is like so important, right? So that is a big reason why I came to Gameheads in the first place, is because I'm a true believer that like whatever I have to do, there has to be like a real intentional purpose behind it. And so when I went to Carroll, I come from a neighborhood is like primarily like Latinx and Black folks, in the Cleveland area. And when I went to Carroll, it's considered to be a PWI. Like, people of color are just, there's not very many of us like at Carroll at all. So I got involved with cultural organizations and just student advocacy on campus. And then that gave me a lot of the vocabulary, a lot of knowledge I needed to just understand, I guess, society a little bit more nuanced. And so the lesson that I carry with me is that like I was in college. I could have just done my thing in school, but I wanted to make school a little bit more than it was. And I kind of carry that with my job. It gave me a new standard on what I wanted to do in my life. And so when I found out about Gameheads, I'm like, I love art, I love video games, and I love advocacy. Like I would have to go for that intersection for sure. And so I carry, I'd say like what I learned is the standard that I want for myself in my life. And I put myself in those positions to meet those standards.
And your journey in education began in 2016 as a servant leader intern with Freedom Schools. Can you talk a bit more about that experience and what exactly you did during your time there?
Oh, I love Freedom School. So Freedom School was incredible because it was through my student organization that I can't remember like what position I was in that year, but the Latin American Student Association. and we worked with the Black Students in Action, then the African American Alliance, quite a bit. And a board member for that group on campus was the site coordinator for Freedom School. And like, we weren't like friends, but we were like more like associates at the time. But he saw what I did and he had respect for me. And he's just like, yo, like, you should do Freedom School. And so I didn't know what that was until I got there. And that's when I learned it's like, well, Freedom Schools have like been around since like, you know, pre-civil rights era, like, you know what I mean? And specifically serving like Black youth and going about education in a much needed way, but it still lives on today. Because if you think about education, it's like, some of us are learning things that are a little bit more pertinent to our walk of life, where others, it's like we're learning about somebody else's walk of life. And it's like, I don't relate to this. Why do I want to do this in school? Mm-hmm. And so that's what I learned. And that's what I related to the most through Freedom School. But that kind of defined what I wanted to do, because there's education and like what you learn in the classroom, what you learn in college, and, you know, what the standards are and whatever. But then there's like the very human aspect, like crossing over with identity. You know what I mean? And so like we all live our lives and we all need to engage with everything in different ways, because that's just what we do. And education is not exempt from that, right? Mm-hmm. And so I loved doing that. Like I was at a Freedom School in East Cleveland, which is like a whole separate city from Cleveland, but it's right next to Cleveland. And I loved it. Like leaving Freedom School was like super hard for me, because I just needed to just, you know, advance in school and my career and all that. But that defined what I wanted to do afterwards. And like, you remember I was saying like about like standards, that came from John Carroll. That opportunity came from John Carroll. And just like it defined like, okay, whatever I do later needs to have a little bit of Freedom School in it. And so that's the biggest thing that I carried with me.
So today you're the program manager at Gameheads. How did you end up at Gameheads, and what is Gameheads' mission?
Woo, okay. So apologies in advance. It's a little bit more of a long-winded answer, because I was just telling this story to some folks here at Gameheads, but like, yeah, like how I got to Gameheads, it all started, it's first of all, like I like to acknowledge that I'm very lucky to be here. Being from Cleveland, you know, there isn't too much access to the tech and video game industry specifically. So I'm very lucky to be here. There was a YouTuber that I watched, and they did, they partnered up with this organization called PAX. There was an expo that they have in Boston, PAX East, and they were giving out tickets. And so if you like retweeted them, you got free tickets and stuff. So I retweeted them and I got free tickets. So I'm like, oh, cool. I never been to PAX before. So when I got there, I'm like, I'm already lucky to be here. I'm trying to network and just meet people in the games industry, because this is what I always dreamed of doing. And so I came across this organization called Latinx and Gaming. And I'm like, well, I'm Latino. I love games. So like, I got to know this place. I got to know this group. And so I went to their panel and I was like, yo, like, I love y'all. Like, I'm trying to like do what y'all are doing. And so I got connected with Juan Vaca. He is one of the board members and founding members of Latinx and Gaming. And we're both Salvadoran, so like that's how I got connected with him. And we just talked, just about like our upbringings and stuff, and like, just life. And we stayed connected. I kind of built up my own little resume for myself, because I did panels just about games at different PAX across the country, but Latinx and Gaming enabled me to get there. So how Gameheads fits into all that is Gameheads was kind of like advertising at PAX East through Latinx and Gaming, because we're partnered, right? And so I always knew about Gameheads. So after a couple years and after doing like participating on two panels, I applied to be a Gameheads student, and I was 25. So this wasn't that long ago. It's actually less than a year ago. So because I after all those experiences, I'm like, I'm working in education for City Year, and I love working with youth. I love the school that I'm working at. I love my city, and I love what I do. But now that I have the taste of working in games or being around games industry folks and artists and stuff, I'm like, this is what I got to be doing. Like, this is the other half of what I got to be doing. Like, I got to find a way for this to come together. So I applied to be in Gameheads as a student, and I actually didn't get in because I was too old. So I'm like, dang, like how am I gonna do this now? So I was in a low point for a minute. And I had a conversation with Damon, you know, not begging him to be in Gameheads at all. In fact, like I didn't even tell him I applied to be in Gameheads. I just wanted him to know who I was. Damon is the executive director. And so I just talked with him and I said, I just want you to know who I am, like, and what my pursuit is and what my perspective is, just being in Cleveland. And, you know, there are plenty of game developers in Cleveland that are doing great things, but there's not many of us, right? And so I'm looking for that bridge. A week later, I see on Twitter, Gameheads is hiring for a program manager. So I'm like, for real? Like, what is the universe doing right now? And so like, at the time I was an impact manager, program manager for City or Cleveland. And so I was like, this is the same title, the same responsibilities for the most part, just working with youth in a pursuit to get to the video games industry. I got to be doing this. And so I'm like, all right, I didn't get in as a student, so why don't I just work for them? And after a long interview process, like I ended up getting the job, and that's where my life changed. Like I moved from Cleveland, moved up to the Bay Area. I'm out here in Oakland, and yeah, and I'm just super, super, super blessed and lucky to be here for sure.
And you work closely with the youth in supporting their pursuit for a career in video game development. So what is something that the youth has taught you?
I think there is the practical and very real part that accessibility to the games industry is huge, because some folks have more access to like college, right, or the education, like even like in school, like high schools and stuff, like depending on where you're at, depending where you grow up, like you know, can depend on like, you know, it can really dictate where your educational journey goes. So that kind of reminds me of like, okay, I know what that looks like back at home, but now I know what that looks like here in the Bay. And so there's that part. But then there's like the very like human and interpersonal like perspective of it, where it's like every one of our students are doing this to be great. Every one of our students are doing this because they want their life to go in this direction. Like this is what they want for themselves. They feel empowered. They empower themselves to do what they want to do. And so what that teaches me is that like I also have to have the same attitude. Like I'm here to be great too. Like I'm here to do great things for them. And so if I want them to reach where they want to go, like I also need to go there too. Like I also need to hold myself to that standards. Like I got to do this with the same energy that they're putting in, like into their lives. Like just because I'm at where I want to be doesn't mean I have to stop with that energy. And so that's the biggest thing that they've taught me for sure, like so far.
As a program manager, what is a typical day like for you?
Woo! So there's no definition of typical day, because it's like, you know, working at Gameheads is a new adventure, like literally every day. You know, one day we're working with artists that are like putting up like, you know, just dope installments in our new spaces. And then just, you know, having meetings with students and just kind of checking in on like their daily lives, right? Like we have a standard of like, you know, schools first, family second, Gameheads third, right? And or family first, school second, Gameheads third, you know, but the point is that like life first and then Gameheads. But that doesn't mean that we're not invested into their lives too. So part of my typical week, you know, typical day is just talking to students, like just checking in, like, hey, like what's going on? You know, how you doing? Like, you know, do you need any support with anything? And then just like fixing up the space. Like we actually just got 2 new spaces down here in Oakland, and they're just beautiful spaces. Like it's our own little mini campus. And so just fixing it up, just like working with people, you know, just to bring it up to par, like where we want it to be. Developing curriculum and just working with instructors, like checking in with instructors and seeing like, hey, like how did class go? Like what more do you need? How can I support y'all? Just, you know, and just being in the middle of everything, right? And then of course, as a program manager, I have a staff that I have to check in with as well. And just kind of make sure that they're supported too. Like, hey, like, how are you doing? You know, and the same way I would check in with students is the same way that I would check in with the coordinators. And just telling them like, hey, how can I help? How are things going for you? And just, you know, and ultimately just upholding like a positive and positive environment. You know, that's a big reason why I'm here too, is my experience in just doing that and the importance of that. And so I am yeah, that's part of my typical day, is just like just talking with a bunch of people and just preparing for that Saturday, you know, when Gameheads is in showtime.
And it seems like you've done a lot of networking or just like putting yourself out there in general. So what are any tips that you would give anyone when it comes to networking or, just, yeah, putting yourself out there?
Yeah. And so networking is important because if you're not talking and you're not making new connections, like the mindset that I have is, how is that not benefiting the students? Like if I'm not networking and meeting new people, then I'm not benefiting the students with any potentials that they can make later. And so if you're networking in the interest of working in education, then that's the mindset I feel like would help. But if you are like, fellow young person that's just trying to make it, ready to get that career going and all that, like that's part of what it takes too, is just getting to know people, right? That's a big part of it. Like you can do really well in school, you can do like awesome in the classroom. But then there's that aspect of like, just looking for a job or looking for that career, right? No matter where you want to go, networking is just a fancy term at that point, because it can look different. Like the standards can look different depending on the space that you want to get into. But ultimately it's just getting to know people. Like who can you get to know that you can help, but also they can help you get you where you want to go. And so those are probably like the quickest tips. The other thing too are like, look for just spaces to be in, right? Outside of Gameheads, I'm an artist. So like I in Cleveland, like I was involved in the Cultural Arts Center, and I was like, I'm just going to do a project, and I got this grant to do a project, but there I was able to meet other artists. And so just putting yourself in places where you just naturally are going to get to know other people is a good way to network too.
So outside of Gameheads, you're also a volunteer moderator and public speaker for Latinx and Gaming. How has that experience been like working in Latinx and Gaming?
They're all like super supportive. Like it's really cool to be in their company, and it actually got me used to being around other people in the community too. They're just there, just to support you. Like every conversation that we have is like, okay, like how can we help? Like how can we be, how can we be of service to you? Like it's really cool. And one of our coordinators, Zoram, is a former student in Gameheads. He works for Gameheads, but he also works for Latinx and Gaming. So he also works closely with like Fernando and Yesenia. So like he actually works for them. So like volunteering like is awesome, because it got to the point where just like, anything that they need help with, like I'm there. It's cool just to kind of see like what goes on behind the scenes for all the like the events that they have, like Unidos, their yearly event that they have like around Hispanic Heritage Month, and then Conexión is their career fair, and I got to be a part of that, just behind the scenes, like just accommodating the industry folks, like making sure that they're cool with where they want to be at too. But at the end of the day, everyone is doing the same thing for the same reason. It's just to help people. And so it's just good to be around. It's good to be around good people. So yeah, that's what it's like.
And you've mentioned how outside of Gameheads, you're an artist. You also enjoy doing illustration and character design in your free time. Was seeing a lack of representation in the game industry a motive for you to want to do character design?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, the project that I did when I was back in Cleveland was called World Building Cleveland. And what I did is I actually drew people in my community as if they were characters in their favorite video games, right? And so that was just to kind of start the dialogue on like the importance of people seeing themselves in the games that they play, just to kind of build a connection, right? Games are so young. Like, you think about like movies that have been out for a while, like people know what like a Latinx movie is because there's so much cultural influence in that, right? In cinema. We're getting there with games. And so a part of that for me is that like I always grew up loving characters in video games, right? Like I'm a big Pokemon fan, because then I think about Pokemon and I'm like like, different Pokemon are based about animals in different regions, and the games try to be faithful to that region, like down to the very biology, the culture, the history, as faithful as they can be to still be appealing to children, right? But like, like it's but that's inspiring to me. So I wanted to do a project around the same, aspects. So character design, not seeing so many like non-white folks as main characters in video games, like I just wanted to just draw them. I just wanted to draw people that, that I've worked with, that I've organized with, and just just people that I know in the community as like their own favorite video game characters. Every single one of us, I'd like to think, has came across video games at some point, and I just wanted to celebrate that. And so that's a big reason why I wanted to get into that. I'm still very early in my journey with character design. Like I still want to learn very new things. And that's another reason why I'm excited to be a part of Gameheads too, because we have like character design classes, and so that's something I'm looking forward to just kind of shadowing and picking up things here and there.
So going back to Gameheads, you guys also have a program called Gameheads Classic. How did this program come about?
Yeah, so Gameheads Classic is the main program, and so that's the Saturday program where all the youth come together here at Gameheads, and we have all the classes for them. And so how it came about was Damon had a group of youth around like 8 years ago put together a project and literally made a video game. And so that same group of people like stuck with it and it ended up turning into this organization over time. And so now we're at the point where we have like the largest, I think around the largest amount of students that we've ever had. And this latest recruitment class is the largest that we've ever, accepted. And so because we can do that, we have new spaces now, and we have more resources available too to accommodate. And so other branches of Gameheads. Gameheads is an umbrella. Gameheads Classic is a program of Gameheads, but we also have accreditation programs where we'll partner in with the university. Most recently, that's what I'm trying to say, is we partnered with Cal State East Bay, Niantic, which is industry leader in augmented reality, and Oculus, now Meta, industry leader in virtual reality, to offer intro to virtual reality and intro to augmented reality through Cal State East Bay for college credit. And so we have an accreditation program as well. And then we have Gameheads Live, which is a more like free-flowing program where people can like watch pre-recorded classes, some of which will be live classes on their own time. And so that's coming up here, later in the year. And so those are like the three main branches of Gameheads. But Gameheads Classic is like the main, most intimate part of the organization.
And what do you hope for the future of Gameheads?
Yeah, what do I hope for the future of Gameheads? Like, I just hope, number one, I hope that the youth get where they want to go, right? They already are, but I have a personal mission of just like building a bridge between youth in Cleveland and into the games industry, right? That's like my personal goal. For the youth that have been here, to get them into the jobs that they want to go, right? If they want to start a studio, helping them start their studio. If they want to go indie, like let them go indie, right? It just enabling youth, or not enabling youth, but like supporting them in their journey and where they want to go. And then for the organization at large, like just to have like a permanent impact on education for youth that are just not represented in the games industry. And so like I want the games industry to recognize this organization as the standard of like just preparing youth of color, youth of low income backgrounds to actually to work at these companies because they deserve it. This trend where mostly white folks from more wealthy backgrounds that are just taking up the industry, to me that's not right, because we have plenty of youth that come from backgrounds like my own, youth that are living here in the Bay Area that more than likely like won't be able to just afford staying here, because of like the gentrification that's happening because of tech. Like, we have to, chisel away at that and help youth like get where they want to go, but also enable them to stay where they want to stay. You know what I mean? And so like I want Gameheads to be the organization, but be a part of a whole collective movement, you know, to allow all that to happen.
Before we end, we have some rapid fire questions.
Yes. Love rapid fire.
The first question is, what is your favorite color?
It's like a shade of blue. It's I forgot what it was called. It's like a deep royal blue, and I saw it on Instagram and it was a fancy name. I forgot the name, but it's like a deep royal blue.
When are you the happiest?
When am I happiest? Probably like when I'm, you know, just talking with people. Like right now, I'm happy because I'm talking with y'all. Like I like having conversations. And so yeah, that's probably when I'm the happiest for sure.
Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Knowing what I know now, what advice would I give my 18-year-old self? Take school serious, take it more serious. Like, you know, you're getting ready to go on a journey to college. It's gonna be tough, it's gonna be hard. It's not always gonna be smiles and adventures all the time. Like, but just know, you know, you have resources available to you. You have adults that are invested in your success, and use them. Like be humble enough to reach out to them and ask for help.
If you could have 3 people, dead or alive, for dinner guests, who would they be?
I would love to talk to Ken Sugimori. He is the illustrator for Pokemon. I love his art style, and I try to gather a lot from that. Monsignor Romero. Oscar Romero is like, you know, super important, you know, to me. And yeah, I would love to just talk with him about just everything. And then lastly, it's a tie between 2 people. I would probably have to go with, I'd love to talk with Angela Davis for sure. Like I think I would love to have just like an awesome conversation with her. And so yeah, Angela Davis.
What are you most afraid of?
Getting bored. Like I hate getting bored. That's my biggest fear. I always gotta be doing something. So getting bored.
What is a song that you have on repeat currently?
You're the One by Kate Renata. I bet it definitely been on a Kate Renata vibe lately. And so You're the One by Kate Renata. That's definitely the song on repeat.
What do you want your legacy to be?
To be great. That is, you know, I want my legacy to be that. Like, great to me is like, you know, he helped people. He left an impact. He definitely made a change. And people see him as an asset to society, like somebody that, you know, really helped. So like that's what it means to be great to me. So I want to be great.
What's the best compliment you've ever received?
The best compliment that I've ever received. I don't do well with compliments. Like I tend not to remember them because I don't know. It's imposter syndrome. Like I'm imposter syndrome. But probably just now. Somebody just complimented me like, you're gonna do great things. You know, for somebody to see that in me, it almost feels like undeserving because I feel like I haven't been there yet. But for somebody to see that energy in me means a lot. So that's probably the best compliment I've ever gotten.
What is a book that you have read recently or are currently reading that you would recommend?
Yeah, so there's a couple. There is Ken Sugimori Artworks. It is just basically like, I don't know if that's the right word, but anthology or a collection of just his life works, like where he's been as an artist and all the different projects that he's worked on. In fact, I read that book pretty often, every week, if not every day, just to kind of just for inspiration. So Ken Sugimori Artworks, and then Ken Sugimori Works is what it's called. And then there is a book that I just finished reading for class that challenged me, and I recommend it to anyone that is a person of color or a person of low income backgrounds or somebody who is just you know, like looking to get into the games industry, to read that book because it will challenge you. It's called The Theory of Fun by Raph Koster. Because there are a lot of things that I agree with in the book, but a lot of things that definitely challenged me. I'm like, you know what, like, I don't know about that. And I like that feeling where I can feel challenged by work. So, you know, those two books for sure.
Thank you so much, Carlos, for taking the time out of your day to talk with us. Can you let everyone at home know about any upcoming projects and where they can connect with you?
Yeah, so upcoming projects that are happening at Gameheads. And so we'll definitely be at GDC. I'm not sure when the episode's coming out, but you know, next week we'll be at GDC. So if anyone is just looking to get to know the space, our new spaces, that's probably our biggest project that we're working on is our new spaces. You know, our main office space where we have our art and animation lab that's being put together. We just put up a new mural thanks to 2K Foundations. And that was just installed, and it's pretty representative of like all of the work that our students have put in our games. And so if anyone wants to come by and see the space, like just let us know. Other projects that we're working on is our virtual production lab. And so we are ramping up, you know, putting that together, our own studio. So students can put together their own films, right? And using like the latest in industry technology to work on those projects. And so those are the two biggest things. And if anyone has like requesting any more information, if anyone wants to help, to donate, if anyone wants to be a volunteer instructor or a mentor, you can contact us. My email is carlos@gameheadsoakland.org, and I'm more than happy to have that conversation.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Carlos. It was a pleasure having you on here and talking to you. Yeah, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure.